There is one reason people lose games in Overwatch. Every single game can be analyzed, and if you really look at it, the team that lost, 9 times out of 10, did one thing more than the enemy team. They died more. Dying is the killer of games in Overwatch. When you're dead, you can't contest the objective, and when too much of your team is dead, nobody can contest the objective, giving it to the enemy team. Minimizing deaths is the simplest way to get better at Overwatch and potentially rank up if you get good enough at it. You can have the best mechanics in the world. You could have the best aim as Widowmaker, the best aim as McCree, or maybe you're a killer Genji, but if you die too much, you're not gonna go anywhere. That's why today's video is about positioning. I believe bad positioning is the #1 cause of death in Overwatch. So if we correct your positioning, you can hopefully die less, and you can potentially rank up a lot if you know the other parts of the game, which you should if you watch my videos. Let's start with the first rule of positioning, knowing your effective range. Knowing your range is crucial to having good positioning. Ideally, every engagement you take is at your ideal range. If you force enemies to fight at your range, your survivability will increase exponentially. Let me give you an example with Zenyatta. Zenyatta players at low ranks often position themselves very poorly. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at Zenyatta, and I'm going to break his kit down and show you how to analyze a hero and determine their effective range. So let's take a look at Zenyatta's kit. He has 200 HP with no mobility or escape, and he also has an attack with no damage drop-off and ranged healing, as well as his Orbs of Discord, which are also very long ranged. With this all being said, you should know that Zenyatta has a very long effective range. He should utilize this effective range by holding choke points very far away from them, staying in the back of his team while still being aware of flankers, which we'll talk about later, and utilizing his ranged healing, his ranged Orbs of Discord, and his auto attacks, which have no damage drop off. Now, this doesn't mean you should always be as far away from enemies as possible. Let's talk about the next rule of positioning, which is knowing your enemy's effective range. For this, we're going to use McCree as our example. McCree is slightly different than Zenyatta. His Peacekeeper excels at medium range, but also can be used quite effectively at longer and shorter ranges, making him a very versatile hero. He also has a limited escape with the use of his flashbang and his combat role, so he's a little bit safer to play than Zenyatta. If he's safe to play and he's effective at all ranges, there's one thing you should be doing: finding the range that your enemies aren't good at. If the enemy team is running a lot of close range heroes, back it up. You don't want to be closer to those Roadhog hooks or those Reapers. You can play farther away as McCree. If the enemy has a Widowmaker and an Ana, get all up in their face. Use that flashbang aggressively and try to take them out. When you're effective at a lot of ranges, you want to use the range that your enemies don't want to use, because that will help you win more fights. That is good positioning. This is what I meant when I said that the Zenyatta example wasn't static, wasn't 100%. While I do recommend that Zenyatta stay far away, there are situations where Zenyatta should move closer. For example, when the enemy team has a Widowmaker, he should probably be a little bit closer and out of the line of sight of the Widowmaker. Things like this are things you should know when you're trying to know your positioning, but this is just your range. There's so much more to positioning than range, so we're going to move on to that right now. There are 5 questions you should be constantly asking yourself all the time that will improve your positioning dramatically. The first question is what we just talked about, so it doesn't need too much explaining. Are you at your effective range? The effective range, because remember, your effective range changes depending on what the enemy team is running. When they're running close range heroes, your effective range gets longer. You want to be farther away, and vice versa. The second question you should be asking yourself is, are you safe? This may sound a little general, but you'd be surprised how many times in-game you could answer this question with no. When I'm coaching someone, 90% of the time when someone dies, I could have said 2 seconds before they died, are they safe? No, they're not safe. They're not in a very good position. If getting a kill requires putting yourself in an unsafe position, reconsider your pursuit, because you might not actually get the kill if you don't know where the enemy team is, and even if you get the kill and it's like a 1-for-1, that doesn't exactly benefit your team. You really should prioritize prioritize not dying over getting kills. That is the mindset you want. That one sentence right there could probably be the most important one in the video. Prioritize staying alive over getting kills, and you will automatically survive a lot longer. Our next 3 questions are a little more advanced, so if you actually think of these in game, I promise they will help you, but I bet 90% of you after watching this video won't. So make a note of these next 3 tips, all of the 5 questions actually. Make a note of all the 5 questions, and if you ask yourself these constantly while you're in game, you're gonna survive a lot more. Our third question is, where are your flanks and weak points? There is no position in the game where you are 100% safe, so knowing your weak points and where enemies can flank from is crucial. As a support, be wary of flankers and snipers. As a DPS, watch for Roadhog's hook. Knowing your weak points will significantly increase your readiness when an enemy tries to take advantage of them. Many people do not actively watch for their weak points. I myself am guilty of this, and I think it's one of my biggest flaws in game. I promise you, when you start looking out for your weak points, looking at them and consciously being aware of them, you'll find that you can often survive bad situations because you were already thinking of them and you're already ready, if you're also following question number 4. Question number 4 is, where are your escape routes? Knowing your escape routes will improve your survivability greatly. Heroes like McCree must pay attention to this, especially because he has little escape opportunity if he even hesitates for a second. So make sure when positioning to always have an escape route that counters your weak spots. Do this and you'll come to find that many deaths you used to have are somewhat easy to avoid. Now let's move on to the final question, which is probably the most important one, which is why I've saved it for last, because it's interesting that the most important question is actually the easiest to answer. And the 5th question is, can you do your job from this position? And by this position, I mean the position that you've dictated because you followed the 4 other questions. Now, you may be thinking, well, Lone Hawk, that's a stupid question. I know when I'm doing my job and when I'm not doing my job. Okay, that's fine, I understand. It's really easy to tell when you don't know if you're doing your job. But if you followed the 4 other questions properly and you're still not doing your job, that usually means one thing. You really need to switch something up. Maybe it's your hero, maybe it's another hero on your team, your supports aren't working, or your tanks aren't peeling. Regardless of what it is, something needs to be switched up. And I save this question for last because it's honestly the most important. So many players don't realize when they just need to switch heroes. I've seen it countless times in game. People are saying like, this isn't working, I'm not getting help from my supports, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. And your supports are like, well, we're fine, or well, there's nothing we can do. That means you need to switch heroes. Maybe it would be better that someone else switch, sure, but you're probably in solo queue, or your random players are garbage because, you know, you're the only one that can carry, right? Well, of course, I'm kidding, but basically what I'm saying is people will not always switch, or they will not always know what they need to do to counter it. So you're the shot caller here. You need to be the one that knows what positioning would be the best. And if the positioning that's best is close range, switch to Reaper, switch to Tracer. Or if the positioning that's best at longer ranges, then find someone who's good with Hanzo or Widowmaker. Stuff like that are part of positioning. Nobody thinks it is. Nobody thinks countering the enemy team and positioning have anything to do with each other, but they really do. Before we move on to just some random tips and tricks that can help you with positioning, let's go over those 5 questions once again. 1, are you at your most effective range? Remember, the most effective range is the range that benefits you and hinders the enemy. 2, are you safe? Just ask yourself that, and you will find times where you're like, well, there's a guy that could just pop out of that room, or I'm kind of too pushed far up, and back up, counter that. Make sure you actually are safe. That one question can save you a lot more than you think. 3, what are your flanks and weak points? Remember, knowing your flanks and weak points is crucial to question number 4, which is, what are my escape routes? Having an escape route is necessary for team fights, for skirmishing, for whatever, because having an escape route planned already means you can go there right away. You don't have to frantically search once you're in danger. And 5, are you doing your job from this position? If all other things have failed, you're at the right positioning and nothing is working out, you need to consider a hero that is more suited for the positioning that you're being forced into. Hopefully everything made sense to you so far. Now let's go over some random tips and tricks that I really couldn't find a way to integrate smoothly into the video, so we're just going to kind of list them here. The first one is high ground. High ground is huge in Overwatch. If you can find a position where most of your team is on the high ground, you're going to be at a big advantage. The high ground allows you to back off of fights much more easily than low ground, because you can simply back away from the edge that separates the high ground and the low ground, and you will automatically be much safer than you were before. On top of this, your supports can pretty much heal you with ease without really being put at too much risk, which is why high ground is very preferred. You can also see over Reinhardt's shield sometimes, depending on how high you are, and it's just generally a better thing. It's a common military strategy to have the high ground, so there isn't much explaining needed. It's a better way to fight. My next tip is another big one, and this is, if you're in a team fight, your whole team doesn't all need to be grouped up. I see this mistake very often. Just because you're in a team fight does not mean your team should be clumped up, everybody right next to each other. Maintain your positioning in team fights. Keep asking yourself the 5 questions. Ultimates like Reinhardt's Hammer Down, Graviton Surge, and Maze whatever it's called are Blizzard, that's what it's called, are extremely useful against teams that have bad positioning, and that's probably why these heroes are so good at every level, because positioning is probably one of the hardest concepts in Overwatch. So when the enemy team has bad positioning, they're too clumped up, you can often hit them with these very powerful abilities. A good rule of thumb I like to have is, if your whole team, all 6 people can be pulled into a Graviton Surge at any one time, you're way too close to each other. You need to spread out. The same goes for Reinhardt's Hammer Down. If Reinhardt Earth Shatters you and your whole team gets hit by it, wow, your positioning was pretty bad. Don't clump up. Keep those 5 questions in mind. Print them out. Get a tattoo of them on your arm if you really want. Keep asking yourself those questions, and your positioning will never fail most of the time. Okay, the 5 questions aren't foolproof. No positioning is foolproof, like I said, but if you keep them in mind, you're going to be much better off. And finally, the last tip of the video is most important for flankers and supports that are maybe playing in a backline position, or basically anybody who isn't right up with their team and their healers. And that is, make sure you're playing around health packs. Knowing where your health packs are in relation to where you are is going to be essential. It will help you survive a lot, especially as someone like Tracer. I have tried my best to memorize the locations of every health pack, and whenever I'm about to be in danger, or I think I will anticipate danger, I make sure I know where health packs are, because especially as someone like Tracer or Genji, you can get to those health packs very quickly, and they can make you survive so much more than you could without them. So plan ahead, make sure you know where these health packs are, and incorporate them into your decision-making process as to where your flanks are and where your escapes are. Hopefully these tips were helpful to you all. If they were, be sure to leave a like down below. It helps me a lot, and follow me on Twitter at LoneHawk with a 0, not an O, and that's because we'll be doing a giveaway there at 5,000 Twitter followers, so not too far away. Be sure to follow me there to enter that. And yeah, I haven't actually titled this video yet, but I think I'm going to be calling it an advanced guide. I'm not too sure if I'm going to be doing that, but yeah, I think I'm going to call it an advanced guide, because it was a little more than just frontline and backline, which I've seen a lot in guides. So yeah, tell me if you agree or disagree with that, because I can always change the title early on if you don't agree with that. But regardless, I'll see you guys all in the next video. I'm going to try to get you guys some extra ones this weekend, because I missed Thursday, I think. Yeah, I missed a video Thursday because I was tired Wednesday night. I just couldn't do it. So I'll try to get you an extra video out over the weekend to make up for that, and I'll see you guys all later. Lone Hawk, out.